Hey guys, Abel here, back with another video, and in today's video I want to give you a short update on my recent cut where I went down to about 9% body fat. Pretty lean physique, abs with no flexing, pretty aesthetic if I say so myself. And I did a video on this approximately 6 weeks ago where I outlined how I lost the first 22 pounds, about 10 kilograms of body fat, went down from 20 something, maybe 22% body fat, all the way down to the low teens. And at the time I told you that I had about 2 months left. That time has now passed. It wasn't quite 2 months, but I got to my goal, which again was getting abs without flexing. Now, I gotta say that I was procrastinating over doing this video, and honestly, I could barely bring myself to do it because honestly, I was waiting for that cathartic feeling, like I'm gonna feel like it's a super big deal and I'm gonna be super fired up about talking about this. And honestly, I almost cannot be bothered because truth be told, it really wasn't that big of a deal. I pretty much told you the most important things in the last video, which is the diet was pretty easy. It was by far the easiest diet that I've done given how much weight I lost and how lean I've gotten. And that really hasn't changed in the last about 6 weeks or so. I simply kept on eating in a calorie deficit. I managed my lifestyle, my appetite. I never really had to suffer throughout the whole process that much. And that's amazing, but the end result of that is now I'm just sitting here. Nothing special happened by the time I got to my goal. I just simply concluded that I am lean enough, so I added back in a few hundred calories, and now I just moved on with my life. Honestly, that is pretty much it. In fact, I'm going to say that if there is one really big takeaway from this entire diet is that it really doesn't have to be that big of a deal. I really think that one of the reasons why dieting is so hard for many people, including me, why it was always so hard in the past, is because we just make this huge deal out of the entire process. No matter what happens, if we have a bad night of sleep, if we are low in energy, we feel lethargic, we are a bit moody on any given day, it has to be because we are dieting. One of the big lessons that I had to learn is that you will have better and worse days. You will have days when you sleep badly. You will have days when your mood is not so great, when your productivity is not that great. And it's going to happen irrespective of the fact whether or not you are eating in a calorie deficit or not. And that was the case for me. I had better and worse days. And honestly, the fact that I was dieting had little to do with it for the most part. So that's one good insight that I want to share with you right off the bat. That with the right outlook, with a solid structure and with a simple plan that you can simply follow, it just really doesn't have to be that big of a deal. Now that said, I want to share with you a couple of the main things which really made it possible for me to make this diet process so easy, and maybe just the first couple of differences that happened from the last video I did all the way up until recently where I ended my cut. Now, one thing that I do have to say, of course, is that even though the diet on the whole was very easy, it doesn't mean that it never got any harder over the course of the process. Of course it did. By the end of it, I was hungrier, I was more food focused, and that is just natural. I'm not a magician or an airbender or whatever. I'm not going to violate the rules of nature and the rules of biology. Of course, as I was getting leaner, I did become more food focused and hungrier. That is just what happens as you get leaner. But I would say that I kept it under control very well. And there, the biggest lesson, the biggest takeaway, which I really think you have to take advantage of for your diets as well, is that I had a very solid structure, and more importantly, I had a pretty solid meal plan. Now, that doesn't mean that I ate the exact same foods in the exact same amounts every single day, but I would say pretty close to that. So at one point, I tracked down my calories, I put together a simple meal plan out of that. This is something that I'm recommending to all my clients. There is no need to demonize meal plans. I know they have a very bad rap because in the past, coaches were giving out meal plans without any forethought. People were not using their critical thinking, zero flexibility. People put certain foods on the pedestal. No need to do that. However, I think there is a lot of value in not having to suffer from decision fatigue every single day because you know what you're going to do no matter what. And that's exactly what I did. So each day I knew what I'm going to eat for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, and I just did that throughout the whole process. I never had to second guess myself. I never had to measure things 1,500 times every day. I didn't have to come up with some new creative plan over what my meals are going to be that day or what I can fit into my macros, because I had that plan. And honestly, being able to just follow something without investing too much thought into it made the process that much easier. That is another kind of takeaway which I think will be useful for you to think about in the future as well, is that the diet becoming stricter and you tightening up the rules is not there to make yourself suffer just for the sake of suffering. It's not there to appeal to your own neurosis, which I know a lot of us have a tendency to get into, especially when we're dieting. We tend to overthink things. We tend to get overly analytical. The diet becoming stricter and the rules becoming tighter is actually there to eliminate food focus, to reduce the diet stress. For me, at a certain time, just being too flexible, freestyling things too much, actually would have made the diet much more difficult. So for me, having the kitchen scale, putting things on there, knowing exactly what I'm going to eat, and once again, having that meal plan actually made the whole process much, much easier. I would say that for the last 6 weeks or so was the point where I took the kitchen scale out. Up until that point, honestly, my relationship with calorie tracking and measuring was kind of at an in-between stage. So basically what I did is I tracked my calories down about once a month, which meant that I took a look at what I was eating and made an assessment. And I observed, okay, on average, I'm eating about 2,700 calories a day. This was maybe 2-3 months ago. At that point, I simply manipulated a couple of things in my diet and made sure that I'm eating roughly 2,400 calories from that point onwards. And so I just followed that plan for a while. Eventually, I noticed that the process slowed down a little bit. I was not dropping fat as linearly. So once again, a month later, I checked once again what I was eating. I realized that, okay, I'm still eating about 2,400 calories. Given my activity levels at the time, maybe it was a little bit more than I should have been eating. So again, manipulated a couple of things. Took out some fattier protein sources, replaced them by leaner sources. I was eating a little bit too much whole fruits that are higher in calories, added in some berries instead. And so from then on, my calorie intake ended up being around 2,200. And I did that for another month. Honestly, these were the simple, qualitative changes that I made for my diet, and of course that ended up changing it in a quantitative way as well. That brings to mind one other important thing that I had to realize once again, and that is step counts. Tracking your steps and trying to monitor your energy expenditure that way really works. And the reason I realized that is actually pretty simple, is because basically I was eating the same exact number of calories this time as I was eating when I got ready for my photo shoot a year and a half ago, so in 2019 summer. And interestingly, now I weigh about 7 kilograms more. I'm also not as lean as I was then. However, at that point, 2,200 calories got me just around 1% body weight loss per week. Now, being 7 kilograms heavier, not being as lean, the same number of calories got me just around or below 0.5% body weight loss per week. Which is good because I actually did want to lose weight slower, and that's something I'm going to get to as well in a second. However, it really shows that higher step count does work. You burn more calories and you can diet on higher calories if you're going to do that. And in case you're wondering what these step counts are in these two timelines, at the time, my average step count was over 15,000 steps a day. I think there was 1 month where it was close to 18,000 steps on average. Now it was 9,000 to 10,000 steps a day, which was, by the way, very sustainable, very easy to get in. Honestly, I didn't even have to worry about my steps day to day. I simply have a routine that I'm adhering to every day, which is I'm getting up, I'm doing my things with work and just the regular daily chores that I have. I walk to the gym and back. I walk to a grocery store and back. In the gym, I walk 10 minutes before my training on the treadmill and 10 minutes after my training on the treadmill. That gets me roughly 10,000 steps every single day. I don't even have to look at my phone over the course of the day. I just know that as long as I'm doing these things, I'm gonna get my 10,000 steps. At the time, so back when I was doing my photo shoot, I had to go for walks intentionally 1 or 2 times a day at least. I was getting up way earlier so I could still get a walk in while it's nice and sunny outside. It was kind of becoming a pain in the ass. So it was actually really nice that I didn't have to do it this time. And in general, I just didn't want my life to become a project of finding extra minutes and hours in the day to get in more walks. I didn't want my days to become about calorie burning. Now, I mentioned that I intentionally lost less weight per unit of time this time, and that was a huge game changer. Honestly, this is something that I always had a tendency to do, even though I knew better. This is something I never would have advised clients to do. Even friends who were into weight loss, I always would have said, look, as soon as you approach that 10% body fat mark, you gotta slow that weight loss down. I know you're hardcore, I know you have the willpower and the discipline, and you can just starve to death if you need to, just to rush the process. This is me, by the way. If need be, I'm just not going to eat. If that's gonna get me to my goal faster, I'm just going to freaking starve to death. And that's what I did the last time around. All the way to the end, I was losing close to 1% of my body weight per week. You just cannot do that when you're almost 7% body fat. But I did it because it just felt good to see those large drops on the scale. This time I definitely didn't do that. Honestly, ever since I got a decent six-pack, I was not losing anything over 0.5% per week. Many times it was actually under that. And the payoff was huge. I really feel like I retained so much more muscle this time. And looking back, honestly, I always wasted away a little bit too quickly during my diets. During my gaining phases, I managed to push myself up to a pretty nice, pretty decent level in terms of muscularity. Like, I was big, I was close to 95 kilograms at one point, and I still wasn't that fat. However, on the way down, my body weight just dropped so incredibly drastically fast. And I always had a feeling that I could have retained more muscle and I could have been bigger at my leaner states as well. So looking back, when I got to 7% body fat and I was at 76 kilos, at the time I had the feeling that, man, probably I rushed the process a little bit too much. So maybe I could have been 77 and a half. Now looking back, honestly, I think I could have been close to 80 kilos when I got to that really lean physique. Because now, of course, I'm not as lean, and probably there would have to be a disproportionately large drop in my body weight if I was to get to 7% body fat now, but I'm hovering between 83 and 84 kilos now. So I really think that if I was to push myself to 7% body fat now, I could be around 80 kilograms, which is a huge deal because that's 4 kilograms more than the last time around. And this is just a big lesson that we always learn from fitness models, from natural bodybuilders, that a large part of their physique improvement when they do bodybuilding shows or fitness competitions or photo shoots is not necessarily how much muscle they gained when they were bulking or focusing on building muscle, but how much extra muscle they retain as they're dieting down. So this made a huge difference for me this time as well. And honestly, if I had to summarize why this cut went so successfully compared to previous ones, is not so much because my knowledge base expanded so much. I mean, I hope to think that it did expand in these last year or so, but I really think that the biggest difference is just the gap that I closed between theoretical understanding and practical implementation. Now I actually did what I always preached, and I didn't act as if just because I'm able, I'm a special snowflake and special rules apply to me. No, I am just a regular dude like you guys, and I just have to adhere to rational, sound decision making and the principles that apply to pretty much everybody. One other thing which I mentioned in the last update video on my cut is that I didn't flip my life on its head just because I was dieting, which I always had a tendency to do on previous cuts. So I didn't let my social life completely go to the shitter just because I was getting very lean. Which means that I went out to eat to a restaurant basically every single week. There was only 1 week in the final week of my cut where I just really didn't want to mess things up, where I asked my girlfriend if we could stay in and prepare some healthy lunch at home so that I can crush my macros for the day. And she was amazing enough to say yes, which meant a lot to me. Other than that, honestly, it was remarkably normal. I made some changes on that over time as well. So early on, my going out social meals were something like some fried chicken fingers, some French fries, and a salad before that. So it was a pretty relaxed, a little bit indulgent, but very tasty, and I would say still reasonable meal that I had. Over time, I switched over to something like a salad. I asked the waiter, of course, to not put a shit ton of dressings on it, and it was fries and a chicken steak. So I switched out the chicken fingers to a chicken steak. And over time, the French fries got replaced by grilled veggies. So I made some qualitative changes over time like that, and that allowed me to not spike my calories too much on that given day. But for the most part, these eating out meals kind of became my mini diet breaks within the diet. So I didn't do any refeeds or week-long diet breaks or anything like that, but I had these one-off days where I was like, you know what, if I can still be in a deficit today, that's great, but if not, if I go into maintenance mode for that day or maybe into a slight surplus, it's really not the end of the world. It's just one day. So what? It's going to slow down my fat loss phase by a tiny increment. Who cares? And honestly, I really think that kind of practicing living normal life regularly throughout the diet made a huge difference, because at the end of the diet, there was no rebound whatsoever, like zero. So I really felt like, man, I could continue this diet. Honestly, I could do it for another 2 months. It's just like, why would I? I got to my goal. And there is something to be said for keeping the goal the goal. Another thing that made a huge difference in retaining more muscle, in fact, I'm pretty sure I didn't lose any muscle during the whole process, is I was not scared of letting my training volume drop as recovery got impaired, as it often will as you're getting leaner and leaner. So I was progressing in strength really well throughout the whole process basically, but there was one point where I started seeing some performance drops. And look, when you see that, okay, so far progress was good, and the only thing that changed is that I got leaner and I'm eating less food, that means that your recovery is just not there anymore. Which means that with training volume, it should only go in one direction, and that is downwards, okay? So if you're wondering about doing more training volume, doing anything fancy with your training, bringing up a lagging muscle group, that's not the time to do it, okay? You will do all of that once you're out of the diet, once you're bringing your calories up, once you're eating more and more food. That's the time to play around with higher volumes and with bringing up weak muscle groups. When you're dieting, the best you can hope for is that you're keeping up your performance, hopefully still making strength gains, but if evidently you're not recovering anymore, training volume is going down. And that's exactly what I did in my case. Earlier, I would have been scared to do it. I did some super dumb shit. For example, when I saw that strength was plateauing or regressing, I would do more sets to make up for the lack of strength progression. What was the end result of that? I just dug myself into an even deeper recovery hole, so things just got even worse. On the last cut that I did, so on my photo shoot diet, I mean, my chest press performance. So there is this plate loaded chest press in my gym. In the beginning of the cut, I think I was doing 110 kilos for 10 reps. By the end of the diet, I think I was doing 80 or 85 kilos for 10 reps, which is insane. Like, there is absolutely no excuse to lose that much strength on a diet. This time, I didn't lose strength on anything. And on Romanian deadlifts, I actually got to my all-time strongest. By the way, I'm looking at my notes. I made some cheat sheet for myself here in case I'm forgetting everything. It looks like I addressed almost everything. There is one thing that I forgot to mention, and that is a huge key in my dieting success was staying distracted. So the worst thing that you can do on a diet is obsessing over the whole thing all day long. You know, having your MyFitnessPal, checking that 1,500 times a day, watching other people's like diet videos and advice on cutting and contradictory takes from different experts and just driving yourself crazy. That is the bane of the dieting person, okay? The best thing you can do when you're dieting is set yourself on a plan, either designed by you or your coach, and just follow that to the end. And when you run into a problem, when progress is evidently stalling, then revisit the whole thing and make a small change that is going to get you on track once again. But second guessing yourself and spending more time thinking about it than what is required is terrible. It's just going to burn you out. It's really not a good deal. So I really made a strong point in staying distracted, which is amazing because honestly, my productivity and work output was at its all-time highest during this whole diet. I was busier than ever with clients. I was very productive on that front. I got to work with a higher volume of clients than I did in previous times, and that kept me engaged. It absolutely distracted me from the process, and that's how I just had weeks when time just flew by and I looked up and I was like, man, I can't believe I made that much progress and I didn't even think about it. So find things that distract you. It doesn't just have to be your work, it can be other things. Luckily for me, the Champions League knockout phase just started in football, which is kind of my sport of obsession. That kept me engaged as well. I played with my Xbox and that kept me engaged. I was spending time with my girlfriend, that kept me engaged. So just find things that make you forget about the fact that you're dieting. So that was a huge key as well. And again, in previous diets, when I was dieting, I was dieting. You know, my entire life was about managing that diet, and that's just really not a good way to be. Honestly, if I had to mention one thing that was challenging is that there was one period when my sleep kind of went to shit. Honestly, I don't really know why, because nothing really changed in my lifestyle. Stress levels weren't markedly higher. My diet wasn't that much more difficult than it was before. So I think it was just one of those kind of one-off things which happened to me during bulking, during cutting, during maintenance, whatever the nutritional phase is. Sometimes I will just sleep badly. That happened this time as well. And during that time, I just became really tempted to up my caffeine dose a little bit. So I had 1 or 2 week stint where I started having an extra Monster besides my cup of coffee in the morning. Was not a good idea. My sleep definitely got worse from doing that, so I quickly stopped. My workouts got a little bit more fun that way, but man, you just cannot compromise on sleep on a diet. Even though, yes, caffeine is appetite suppressing, yes, it increases your attentional focus while you're dieting. It can make the process more pleasant in some ways. But if you're a slow metabolizer of caffeine like me and you cannot sleep and you cut down your number of sleeping hours by 2, essentially in a way what you're doing is you're adding hungry dieting time to your diet. If you're awake 2 hours more every day during a diet, basically every week, you're adding 14 hours of hungry time to your diet. That's just really not a good deal. So all in all, that was pretty much it. I got to about 9% body fat. I'm very satisfied with the leanness that I achieved. The process was what it was, really not a big deal. And now I transitioned into maintenance, which I'm super excited about. So I'm just looking to maintain this body fat percentage from now on. Now that doesn't mean that every single day I'm going to eat the exact same number of calories. No, this means that I'm going to hover around this body composition. I'm gonna have days when I'm at higher calories and other days when I'm at lower calories. Probably I will have weeks when I will let myself go a little bit, then other weeks where I will tighten things up. That's the beauty of maintenance, you know? There is no pressure. I don't have to feel guilty for under eating a little bit because I'm not trying to optimize a lean gaining phase. I also don't have to feel super guilty if I'm overeating a little bit because there is no set deadline by which I have to get lean. Again, I don't have to worry about getting too fat on my gaining phase because right now this is not a gaining phase. This is a maintenance period. This is what I want to do for the next couple of months. Maybe I'm not going to do this forever. Eventually I will want to do a lean gaining phase again. But now I just want to maintain this nice lean body fat percentage and just see how life is like. So far it seems good, but you know, never say never, or never say always, or never say forever. So guys, that's pretty much it. That's my diet update. I hope you took some useful tidbits out of this. And let me know if you have any questions, any inputs on this. Regardless, subscribe for more videos like this, like the video, push the bell notification icon. And if you want to be coached and mentored by me and work together with me on a coach-client basis, check out the show description below, and then we can talk about it. Other than that, guys, see you in the next video.